My name is Maya Rodriguez, and I am 31 years old. The story I'm about to tell you changed everything I thought I knew about family, love, and my own worth. It is a story that begins with a push down hospital stairs and ends with me finally understanding that sometimes the most painful truths are the ones that set us free. Growing up in our affluent Boston suburb, I learned early that love in the Rodriguez household was conditional, rationed, and always seemed to flow in one direction, toward my younger sister, Sophia. Our brick colonial house with its perfectly manicured lawn and heated swimming pool was the envy of the neighborhood. From the outside, we looked like the American dream incarnate. But within those walls, a different reality existed, one where I was perpetually cast as the supporting character in Sophia's starring role. The pattern established itself so early that I can barely remember a time when it was in the natural order of things. Sophia, 3 years younger than me, had been blessed with the kind of beauty that stops conversations. Her platinum blonde hair caught light like spun gold. Her bright blue eyes sparkled with mischief and charm, and her smile could melt the hardest hearts. More importantly, she had learned to weaponize these gifts with surgical precision. I, on the other hand, was what people politely called the smart one. My brown hair was perpetually unruly, my hazel eyes were hidden behind thick glasses from age 7, and my smile was cautious, uncertain. Where Sophia commanded attention effortlessly, I had to earn every scrap of recognition through achievement, good behavior, and constant accommodation of others' needs. The first clear memory I have of understanding my place in the family hierarchy happened on my 8th birthday. I had been looking forward to this party for weeks, my first real birthday celebration with classmates invited. Mom had promised a special strawberry cake, my absolute favorite, and I had spent hours planning games and activities. The morning of the party, I woke up buzzing with excitement, only to find 5-year-old Sophia sobbing dramatically in the kitchen. What's wrong with her? I asked my mother, who was frantically making phone calls while trying to comfort my sister. She's upset because it's not her birthday, Mom explained, as if this were a reasonable source of distress. She doesn't understand why she can't have a party too. Instead of explaining to a 5-year-old that birthdays take turns, that waiting is part of life, my mother immediately called the bakery and had them add Sophia's name to my cake. By the time my friends arrived, the celebration had been transformed into a joint party. Sophia, suddenly radiant and charming, became the center of attention. She opened 3 of my presents, claiming they were obviously meant for her because they were pink, her favorite color. When I complained to my father later, pulling him aside as the party wound down, his response carved itself into my memory with painful clarity. "Why can't you be more generous like your sister?" he asked, his disappointment evident in every word. "She shares everything with you. Can't you do the same for her?" I was 8 years old, and I was being lectured about generosity on my own birthday because I wanted to keep my own presents. That night, lying in bed listening to my parents praise Sophia for being such a good sport about sharing my party, I began to understand that my role in this family was to make Sophia's life easier, more pleasant, more special. The pattern only intensified as we grew older. When I made honor roll in high school, maintaining a 4.0 GPA while working part-time at the local library, my parents nodded absently and reminded me to help Sophia with her algebra homework. When Sophia managed to pull her math grade up from a D to a C+, they took her out for an expensive dinner at her favorite restaurant to celebrate her incredible improvement. The year 1 received a full academic scholarship to Boston University, an achievement that represented years of hard work and sacrifice. My accomplishment was mentioned in passing at dinner, sandwiched between discussions of Sophia's latest social media posts and her decision to try out for the school play. 3 months later, when Sophia announced she wanted to attend community college part-time to explore her options, my parents threw a party and bought her a brand new BMW as motivation. Education is so important, my mother gushed, as if Sophia's decision to take 2 classes per semester was equivalent to my full course load and double major. We're so proud of both our girls for pursuing their dreams, but the dreams they celebrated were never mine. Our family therapist, Dr. Reynolds, never seemed to see the imbalance that was so obvious to me. When I was 16 and struggling with depression that I now recognize was largely situational, my parents insisted on family therapy sessions. I tried explaining the pattern during those mandatory meetings, how my achievements were minimized while Sophia's were celebrated, how my needs were consistently secondary to hers, how I felt invisible in my own family. Dr. Reynolds would smile sympathetically and suggest I might be experiencing normal sibling rivalry. My parents would nod in agreement, their expressions conveying patient tolerance for my jealousy issues. And Sophia would dab at non-existent tears, claiming she just wanted a better relationship with her troubled big sister. Maya seems to have some difficulty accepting that families celebrate different achievements in different ways. Dr. Reynolds would note in his careful clinical voice, "Perhaps we can work on helping her develop more realistic expectations about attention and recognition." The message was clear. My perceptions were wrong, my feelings were invalid, and my expectations were unreasonable. I learned to stop voicing my concerns, to swallow my hurt, to smile and nod when Sophia received praise for accomplishments that paled in comparison to my own. Despite the constant undermining, I threw myself into building a life outside my family's dysfunction. I worked 2 jobs while putting myself through graduate school, earning an MBA in marketing while my parents paid for Sophia's leisurely exploration of various community college courses. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, eating ramen noodles and generic cereal, while Sophia enjoyed the comfort of her childhood bedroom and my mother's home-cooked meals. By age 30, I had secured a position as marketing director for a growing tech company. The promotion had come through just 2 weeks before the hospital incident that would change everything. When I called my parents to share the news, my mother's first response wasn't congratulations or pride. "That's nice, dear," she said in the distracted tone she used when she wasn't really listening. "But did you hear Sophia might be getting back together with Tyler? He comes from such a good family. His father owns 3 car dealerships." The fact that Tyler had cheated on Sophia multiple times and had a drinking problem seemed irrelevant compared to his family's financial status. My promotion to a senior position at a company that was revolutionizing digital marketing was just nice. That conversation should have been a warning sign of what was to come. The one person in my family who had ever shown me unconditional love was my grandmother Elena. At 84, she was sharp as a tack. With silver hair she wore an elegant chignon and eyes that missed nothing. She had moved in with my parents after my grandfather passed away 5 years earlier, and I made a point to visit her regularly despite the uncomfortable atmosphere in my childhood home. Grandma Elena saw through the family dynamics with crystal clarity. She never said anything directly. She was too diplomatic for that, but her actions spoke volumes. She remembered every one of my achievements, asked detailed questions about my work, and genuinely celebrated my successes. When I graduated with my MBA, she was the only family member who attended the ceremony. When I got my first promotion, she took me out for lunch at her favorite restaurant and toasted my success with champagne. "You remind me of myself at your age," she told me during one of our regular afternoon tea sessions. "Determined, hardworking, always trying to prove your worth to people who should see it automatically." She had been a teacher before marriage and motherhood, and she understood the value of education and achievement in ways my parents seemed to have forgotten. More importantly, she saw me, really saw me, as a person worthy of love and respect. When Grandma Elena was hospitalized for pneumonia, I was genuinely terrified. She wasn't just my grandmother. She was my anchor, the one person who made family gatherings bearable, who validated my experiences and reminded me that I had value. The incident that changed everything happened on a gray October afternoon when Grandma Elena was hospitalized for pneumonia. At 84, even a routine illness could be serious, and I had been visiting her daily since her admission 3 days earlier. I arrived at Massachusetts General Hospital at exactly 2 p.m., as had become my routine. My parents were already in Grandma's room, sitting stiffly in the visitor chairs while she dozed fitfully. They acknowledged me with brief nods, the kind of perfunctory greeting you might give a distant acquaintance. I settled into the chair beside Grandma's bed, gently taking her hand. Her skin was paper-thin and cool, but her grip was still strong. When she woke, her face lit up with a smile that made my heart ache with love and worry. "Maya, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the oxygen mask she'd been wearing. "Tell me about your new job. I want to hear everything." For nearly an hour, we chatted about my promotion, her garden plans for spring, and her memories of teaching. My parents occasionally interjected with comments about Sophia's latest achievements, which mostly involved her growing social media following and a potential opportunity to model for a local boutique. Grandma was polite but clearly tired, and I could see her energy flagging. Sophia arrived nearly 2 hours late, making her characteristic dramatic entrance. She swept into the room with a small gift bag and elaborate excuses about traffic, though I suspected she'd been at the mall or getting her nails done. Grandma was polite but exhausted, and she drifted off to sleep again within minutes of Sophia's arrival. That's when the conversation took a disturbing turn. "I really think I should get the sapphire necklace," Sophia said without preamble, examining her reflection in her compact mirror. "It matches my eyes perfectly, and Maya doesn't even wear jewelry." My mother nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. We should probably start sorting through things soon, just to be prepared." I stared at them in shock. "She's getting better, not dying," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "And maybe we shouldn't discuss dividing her possessions while she is right here in the room." My father gave me that familiar disapproving look, the one that had made me feel small and wrong for as long as I could remember. "Always so dramatic, Maya. We're just being practical." But there was nothing practical about vultures circling before the patient had even recovered. I noticed Sophia slip something from Grandma's bedside drawer into her purse when she thought no one was looking. I said nothing, but made a mental note to check what was missing on my next visit. The tension was thick by the time visiting hours ended at 7 p.m. Grandma had only been awake for brief periods, and I felt guilty about the atmosphere we had created in her room. As we gathered our things to leave, I caught Sophia pocketing what looked like Grandma's reading glasses, the expensive ones with the diamond accents that she treasured. We left Grandma's room together, my father leading the way toward the bank of elevators at the end of the corridor. The hallway was quiet except for the squeak of nurses, shoes on the polished floor, and the distant beeping of medical equipment. My mother walked close to Sophia, their heads bent together in hushed conversation. I caught fragments about diamond earrings and family tradition, which only intensified my unease. As we approached the elevators, Sophia suddenly turned to me with that sweet smile she used when she was about to strike. "That lipstick color makes you look washed out," she said loudly enough for passing hospital staff to hear. "And is that the same outfit you wore to Cousin Amber's wedding last year? I guess the big promotion hasn't improved your fashion sense." I took a deep breath, determined not to engage. "I'm not really concerned about my lipstick right now, Sophia. I'm worried about Grandma." My mother immediately jumped to Sophia's defense, as she always did. "Your sister is just trying to help you, Maya. You could put a little more effort into your appearance, especially since you're representing the family at that new job." The familiar sting of their unified front against me burned, but I had years of practice swallowing my hurt. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, and my father held the door open. The thought of being confined in that small space with them for 6 floors suddenly felt unbearable. "I'll take the stairs," I said, stepping back. I could use the exercise. My father shrugged with indifference. "Suit yourself." The elevator doors were already closing when I heard Sophia tell my mother, "I should talk to her. She seems upset about the jewelry conversation." Before I could process what was happening, Sophia had slipped out of the elevator and was following me toward the stairwell door. I pushed it open, the heavy metal cool against my palm. The stairwell was brightly lit but empty, our footsteps echoing as I started down the concrete steps. "You don't have to pretend you care," I said over my shoulder, gripping the metal handrail. Sophia's voice changed instantly, dropping the syrupy sweetness she used around our parents. "I saw you watching me in Grandma's room. Always the self-righteous one, aren't you?" I stopped at the landing between the 5th and 4th floors, turning to face her. "Did you take something from her drawer?" Sophia's perfectly manicured hand clutched her designer purse tighter. "None of your business. Besides, she promised me her jewelry years ago." "That's not true, and you know it," I countered. "Grandma would never play favorites like Mom and Dad do." Something flashed in Sophia's eyes, a dangerous glitter I'd seen before, but never fully understood. "Everyone plays favorites, Maya. It's not my fault no one picks you." I shook my head, turning to continue down the stairs. "I'm not doing this with you." "Not here." But Sophia wasn't finished. She followed close behind me, her voice taking on a vicious edge I'd never heard before. "Must be hard," she continued, "getting that big promotion when everyone knows you'll never be good enough. Does your boss know your own family can barely stand you?" I kept walking, focusing on each step. 1, 2, 3, 4. I had learned long ago that engaging with Sophia when she was in this mood only made things worse. I saw the way Grandma lit up when you walked in. Sophia's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "She never looks at me like that." "Don't move her yet," Nurse Patricia instructed the orderlies as she carefully stabilized my neck. Her hands were gentle but firm, her eyes focused completely on assessing my injuries. I tried again to speak, but only managed to whimper as pain radiated from my ribs with each shallow breath. My parents remained several steps above us, still comforting Sophia, who had escalated to full-blown hysterics. Through my foggy consciousness, I heard my father explaining to another hospital staff member who had arrived. My daughters were walking down the stairs. Maya was going too fast and lost her footing. Sophia tried to catch her, but couldn't reach her in time. "She just fell so suddenly," Sophia added between dramatic sobs. One minute we were talking about Grandma, and the next she was tumbling down. I screamed for help, but it happened so fast. Nurse Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly at their explanation, but she remained focused on me. "We're going to move you onto a backboard," she explained calmly. "Try to remain as still as possible. Can you tell me your name?" "Maya," I managed to whisper. "Good. Maya, can you tell me where you feel pain?" "Everywhere," I gasped. "Ribs, head, wrist." The orderlies carefully slid a backboard beneath me and secured straps across my body. As they prepared to lift me, I caught Nurse Patricia looking up at the security camera again, her expression thoughtful. She turned to one of the other nurses who had arrived. "Julie, please note the time of the incident and make sure all security footage is preserved," she said quietly but firmly. "Standard procedure for falls in the hospital." Those words, "make sure all security footage is preserved," became my lifeline in the darkness that followed. The next few hours passed in fragments. The cold table of the CT machine, the radiologist's gentle hands positioning my wrist, the sting of an 4 needle, the gradual dulling of pain as medication flowed into my veins. Dr. Winters, a stern-faced man with salt and pepper hair, delivered his diagnosis. 3 broken ribs, a fractured left wrist, moderate concussion, and significant internal bruising. "You're very lucky, Miss Rodriguez," he said. "Falls down concrete stairs can be fatal." Lucky wasn't the word I would have chosen. As night fell, I drifted in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of nurses checking my vital signs and adjusting my medication. Through the fog, I heard my parents' voices in the hallway outside my room. "We need to get our story straight before she's fully conscious," my father was saying, his voice low but intense. "The hospital is required to report injuries like this." "Sophia is devastated," my mother replied. "She really tried to catch Maya." "Of course she did," my father agreed quickly. "And that's exactly what we tell everyone. It was a tragic accident. Maya was always clumsy as a child." Their voices faded as they moved down the hall, leaving me alone with the rhythmic beeping of monitors, and the growing certainty that no one would believe me against the united front of my family. No one except perhaps Nurse Patricia, who had seen something in that security camera that made her suspicious. The next morning brought Detective Maria Santos, a woman in her mid-40s with practical short hair and intelligent eyes. She was thorough and compassionate as she took my statement, recording every detail from the argument in the stairwell to Sophia's whispered, "You deserved it," as I lay injured. "The security footage confirms your version of events," she told me after I finished. "We have clear views from 3 different cameras. There's no question that this was a deliberate act." "My family won't see it that way," I said wearily. "They'll find a way to excuse her behavior. They always do." Detective Santos made a note. "Has your sister been violent toward you before?" The question made me pause. Had she? There had been plenty of accidents over the years, but nothing this serious. Nothing I could prove. "Nothing this serious," I finally answered. "But there's been a pattern of harmful behavior disguised as accidents." "And your parents typically side with your sister?" "Without fail." She nodded thoughtfully. "I've already spoken with your parents and sister. They've hired an attorney, Richard Cooper. He's well known in the city." Of course they had. My father would spare no expense to protect his favorite daughter. "What happens now?" I asked. "We filed assault charges against Sofia Rodriguez. Given the severity of your injuries and the clear evidence, the DA is taking this very seriously. There will be a preliminary hearing once you're well enough to attend." The reality of what this meant hit me fully. This wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. My sister could face criminal charges. My family relationships, already strained, might be permanently destroyed. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I doing the right thing? Detective Santos seemed to read my thoughts. "Maya, what happened to you wasn't a minor family squabble. Your injuries could have been fatal. You have every right to seek justice." After she left, I lay back against the pillows, exhausted but resolute. My phone buzzed with incoming messages. News travels fast in a family crisis. My Uncle Thomas expressing shock and asking what really happened. My cousin Jenna indicating she'd always known Sophia had issues. And most surprisingly, a message from my father's sister, Aunt Isabella, whom I hadn't seen in over a year. "I believe you." Her text read simply, "Call me when you can talk privately." The next morning brought a new development. Sophia had apparently shared her version of events on social media, portraying herself as the victim of a misunderstanding. According to her post, I had been acting erratically in the stairwell, and she had merely reached out to stabilize me when I lost my balance. The security footage, she claimed, failed to capture the full context. My marketing colleague, Denise, forwarded me a screenshot with a concerned message. "Is this true?" People are sharing it everywhere. Soon after, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was my boss, Martin. "Maya, I've received some concerning calls about you," he began awkwardly. "Someone claiming to be your mother said you were rehabbing a mental health crisis and making false accusations against family members." I closed my eyes, the betrayal cutting deep. "Martin, I am in the hospital with 3 broken ribs and a fractured wrist because my sister pushed me down a flight of stairs. There's security footage that proves it." His relief was audible. That's what I figured. Take all the time you need to recover. Your job is secure. Not everyone was so supportive. By afternoon, I discovered that Sophia had started a GoFund campaign titled Help Me Fight False Accusations. The description painted me as a jealous sister who had fabricated an assault claim after an accidental fall. It had already raised several $1,000s. The day of my discharge arrived, but I had nowhere to go. My apartment was a third-floor walk-up, impossible to navigate with my injuries. My parents had made it clear that their home was only open to me if I dropped the charges against Sophia. As I sat on the edge of the hospital bed in borrowed clothes, trying to figure out my next steps, Nurse Patricia knocked on the door. "Your aunt is here," she said. "Isabella Rodriguez? She says she is your father's sister." Aunt Isabella swept in, her familiar floral perfume bringing a rush of childhood memories. Unlike my mother's brittle elegance, Aunt Isabella had always been warm and genuine, with laugh lines around her eyes and a tendency to speak her mind that often put her at odds with my father. "Look at you," she said, taking in my cast and the careful way I held my ribs. That girl finally went too far, didn't she? The simple acknowledgement of the truth nearly undid me. I fought back tears as Aunt Isabella sat beside me on the bed. "Diego called to tell me his version of events," she continued, naming my father. "Convenient accidents and misunderstandings. The same excuses he's been making for Sophia since she was old enough to talk." "You believe me?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "Of course I do. I've watched Sophia manipulate your parents for years. The difference is I never had concrete proof until now." She patted my knee. "The hospital sent me your discharge instructions. You're coming to stay with me until you're back on your feet." Relief washed over me. "Are you sure? Dad will be furious with you." She laughed. "Diego's been furious with me since we were children. It hasn't stopped me yet." Aunt Isabella's cozy Cape Cod-style house became my sanctuary over the next weeks. Physical therapy was grueling, the pain often bringing me to tears, but slowly my body began to heal. The emotional wounds were proving more stubborn. 2 weeks after my discharge, I received an unexpected call from Alex, Sophia's ex-boyfriend. They had dated seriously for nearly a year before breaking up 6 months earlier. "I saw the news about what happened," he said without preamble. "I wish I could say I was surprised." "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "Sophia has anger issues, Maya. I experienced it firsthand. The night we broke up, she threw a wine bottle at my head. It missed, but it put a hole in my apartment wall." My grip tightened on the phone. "Did you report it?" "I should have," she cried, said she'd get therapy. "I just wanted out of the relationship." He paused. "But I kept the texts she sent afterward, threatening me, then apologizing, then threatening again. I think they might help your case. Show a pattern." The evidence continued to mount. Detective Santos uncovered 3 previous incidents where Sophia had been involved in accidents that resulted in injuries to others. A college roommate who fell down icy steps after an argument with Sophia. A former co-worker who suffered second-degree burns when Sophia accidentally knocked over a pot of coffee. A neighbor's child who broke an arm falling from a tree that Sophia had allegedly encouraged him to climb. "In each case, your parents intervened," Detective Santos explained during one of our meetings. "Financial settlements were reached. No charges filed." The pattern was clear, but the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. My grandmother, now recovered enough to leave intensive care, had requested to see me privately. I visited her hospital room, shocked by how frail she appeared. "I need to give you something," she said, her voice weak but determined. She directed me to her handbag, where I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. "I wrote this the day after you told me about your promotion," she explained. "I was going to mail it, but then I got sick." Inside was a handwritten letter, 3 pages long. detailing multiple instances where she had witnessed Sophia's disturbing behavior and my parents' enabling responses. She described overhearing Sophia threatening me when she thought no one was listening. Watching my parents dismiss my concerns when I tried to tell them about incidents. I changed my will last month, Grandma confirmed. Not because you manipulated me, but because I've watched how they treat you for years. You deserve better, Maya. Her words were the validation I had craved my entire life. As the preliminary hearing approached, I found myself surrounded by unexpected support. Nurse Patricia had organized several hospital staff who had witnessed the aftermath of the incident to testify if needed. My colleagues at the marketing firm sent daily encouragement and offers of hope. Aunt Isabella stood firmly by my side, undeterred by my father's angry calls, demanding she stop interfering. The night before the hearing, I received a final attempt at manipulation. My parents arrived at Aunt Isabella's house unannounced, Sophia in tow. She looked thin and drawn, clearly coached to appear as pitiful as possible. "Please, Maya," she whimpered, using my full name in a way that sounded foreign coming from her. "I made a terrible mistake. I just need one more chance." My father stepped forward with paperwork. "We've spoken to Richard. If you sign this statement withdrawing your accusations, Sophia will agree to anger management classes. We can handle this privately as a family." I looked at them, really looked at them, perhaps for the first time. My father, tall and imposing, used to getting his way through intimidation. My mother, perfectly coiffed even in crisis, more concerned with appearances than reality. And Sophia, the master manipulator, already calculating her next move behind the tears. "No," I said simply. "What do you mean no?" my father demanded. "I mean no, I won't sign anything. I won't drop the charges. I won't pretend this didn't happen. After everything we've done for you," my mother cried, falling back on her favorite refrain. "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked again, the question that had gone unanswered in the hospital. "All my life, you've taught me that my feelings don't matter, my safety doesn't matter, my achievements don't matter. The only thing that matters is protecting Sophia." "That's not true," my mother protested. "It is true," Aunt Isabella interjected from behind me. "And deep down, Carmen, you know it." My father's face darkened with anger. "This is your final chance, Maya. Drop this nonsense now, or you are no longer our daughter." The threat that had once terrified me now felt almost liberating. "I think I stopped being your daughter a long time ago, Dad. Maybe I never really was." The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, wood-paneled and formal. I sat beside Detective Santos and the district attorney, a serious woman named Julia Matthews. Across the aisle, Sophia sat with my parents and Richard Cooper, the expensive attorney my father had hired. Judge Peterson, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, called the court to order. The proceedings began with the presentation of evidence, including the security footage from multiple angles. The courtroom fell silent as the video played, the deliberate push unmistakable. I heard my mother's muffled sob when Sophia's dissatisfied expression was clearly visible before she composed herself for my parents' arrival. Richard Cooper tried to argue that the footage showed an emotional moment between sisters, that Sophia had reached out in frustration, not intending to cause serious harm. Judge Peterson's skeptical expression suggested she wasn't buying it. The hospital staff testified next. Dr. Winters detailed my injuries, emphasizing that falls down concrete stairs frequently result in permanent disability or death. Nurse Patricia described the discrepancy between my family's account and what the footage revealed. When it was my turn to speak, I felt surprisingly calm. I described the argument in the stairwell, Sophia's anger over our grandmother's will, and the deliberate nature of the push. Then I read my impact statement, detailing the lifetime of emotional abuse that had preceded the physical assault. "My injuries will heal," I concluded. But the knowledge that my own sister would intentionally harm me, and that my parents would choose to protect her rather than acknowledge the truth has caused a wound that may never fully close. Sophia took the stand next, her entire demeanor transformed. Gone was the confident, manipulative woman I knew. In her place was a fragile, tearful figure who spoke in a trembling voice about her momentary lapse in judgment and deep regret. Her performance might have been convincing if not for the evidence that followed. Detective Santos presented Alex's text messages showing Sophia's pattern of threats and manipulation. The records of previous accidents involving Sophia were entered into evidence, along with documentation of the financial settlements my parents had arranged. Most damaging was my grandmother's deposition, recorded from her hospital bed since she was still too weak to attend in person. Her clear, detailed account of Sophia's concerning behavior over the years, and my parents' enabling responses left little room for doubt. Judge Peterson looked directly at Sophia. "Miss Rodriguez, the evidence before this court suggests this was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of behavior. Do you wish to revise your statement before I make my ruling?" Sophia glanced at Richard Cooper, who nodded slightly. "Your Honor," she began, her voice suddenly steadier, "I did push my sister. I was angry about family matters and lost control, but I never intended to cause serious harm." The partial admission was clearly a strategic move, an attempt to mitigate consequences now that outright denial was no longer viable. Judge Peterson seemed unimpressed. Based on the evidence presented, including clear video footage and the defendant's partial admission, I find probable cause to proceed with charges of second-degree assault. The weeks that followed brought significant changes. Sophia accepted a plea deal that included probation, mandatory therapy, and a restraining order preventing her from contacting me. My parents paid for everything, of course, and continued to insist publicly that the incident had been misunderstood. My grandmother recovered enough to move in with Aunt Isabella temporarily, unwilling to return to my parents' home. She revised her will again, this time excluding Sophia entirely and reducing my parents' inheritance significantly. "Actions have consequences," she told me during one of our afternoon tea sessions. It's a lesson they should have learned long ago. With Aunt Isabella's help, I found a new apartment in a secure building with an elevator. My colleagues at the marketing firm welcomed me back with understanding and flexibility. The physical therapy continued, painful but necessary, gradually restoring my strength and mobility. Perhaps the most significant change was internal. Working with Dr. Morales, a therapist Aunt Isabella had recommended, I began to recognize and dismantle the harmful beliefs I had internalized growing up. The constant message that my needs were less important, that keeping the peace meant accepting mistreatment, that family loyalty required self-erasure. 6 months after the incident, I received an unexpected letter from my mother. Unlike her previous attempts at contact, which had focused on putting the family back together without any acknowledgement of wrongdoing, this letter contained something new, a tentative mission of failure. "I don't know when things went so wrong," she wrote. "Perhaps we did favor Sophia. Perhaps we should have listened to you more. I miss my daughter." It wasn't a full apology or a complete recognition of the harm done, but it was a start. After discussing it with Dr. Morales, I agreed to meet my mother at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between our homes. The conversation was awkward and stilted. Years of dysfunctional patterns couldn't be undone in a single meeting. But for the first time, my mother seemed to actually hear me when I spoke about my experiences growing up. We agreed to monthly lunches, a tentative rebuilding on new terms. My father remained distant, unable or unwilling to acknowledge any mistakes. Sophia had moved to Chicago after completing her court-mandated therapy, apparently starting fresh where her history wasn't known. I felt no desire to reconnect with her. The memory of her satisfied smile as I fell was still vivid in my mind. On the 1-year anniversary of the incident, I returned to Massachusetts General Hospital with a gift basket for the staff who had helped me. Nurse Patricia greeted me with a warm hug, marveling at my recovery. "You look wonderful," she said. "Strong. I feel strong," I replied, realizing it was true. The physical healing had been the easier part. The emotional healing continued, with setbacks and difficult days. But I was building a life based on truth rather than pretense, surrounding myself with people who valued me as I was. In the end, the security camera that captured my sister's deliberate act of violence had done more than provide evidence for a court case. It had shattered the carefully constructed illusion that had defined my family for decades. The painful truth it revealed had set me on a path toward authentic healing and self-discovery. Sometimes the family we build matters more than the family we're born into. That's the lesson I carry forward one day at a time. My name is Maya Rodriguez, and I'm 32 years old now. I survived my sister's attempt to destroy me, and I found my voice in the process. The security camera footage didn't just prove what happened in that stairwell. It proved that my truth mattered, that my life had value, and that I deserved justice. Sometimes the most painful moments in our lives become the foundation for our greatest transformations. The stain of that betrayal will always be part of my story, but it no longer defines me. I define myself now, and that makes all the difference.